Alright, great news coming out from the Outriders team. It seems that they are getting closer to fixing the inventory wipe issue, of course also the inaccessibility to some of these characters, and by the way, that is intended for the time being to further prevent your inventory loss. We're gonna talk about that in just a little bit. And they also made a very interesting poll yesterday about how many of you have lost your inventory, and I was actually quite surprised by how many did so. So let's talk about that, as well as a ton of other updates and information about what you should expect from Outriders in the upcoming days and weeks. And as always, if you enjoyed this video at any point, it will be super awesome if you left a like on it, or don't. It's your choice. You can do whatever the heck you want to do, but I want to start things off, of course, with the poll that we did yesterday. I was really curious how many of you guys lost your inventories versus how many still had it left. And surprisingly enough, 78% of you guys responded that your inventories were still there at the time of making this poll, while about 22% of you mentioned that it got completely wiped. So these numbers might not look that bad, but when you consider that there's hundreds of thousands of people playing across multiple platforms, and about a quarter of these people have these issues, most of them will vent their frustration on the internet, which is why most of the threads and the topics online right now are regarding this issue. And of course, also given the fact that even though only 22% of the people who watch me have encountered this issue, this doesn't mean that the remaining 78% won't get affected at some point. But the way it looks, it seems that the issue has been restrained. There's been a number of safeguards in the past few days that they have added, and I do want to talk about that since of course we do have some new announcements. So this came in fresh since our last update. People Can Fly mentioned that we have continued to monitor and implement preventive measures against inventory wipes. These server-side changes have helped reduce occurrences since Saturday, which is great news because it was definitely the worst in the weekend. We are currently testing a new game side patch to fix the issue, and will provide you with an update as soon as we can. Please remember, we're working steadfastly on a process of restoring as much lost gear as possible to those affected. Of course, full details can be found here in the thread we've talked about in other videos. We know this has been unfortunate for some of you. Thank you for the patience and support. So what this means is that we're likely going to get a smaller sized update, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, that will fix some of these issues, or at least further implement safeguards against it. Personally, I still think that online connectivity is going to always cause these issues to a certain extent, so it might as well just be a better idea to maybe work on a way to let us play offline and be done with this, have localized save files and just play like that, because literally there's no reason for us to play online when we're doing single player. Personally, just my opinion, you don't have to agree with it. But in the meantime, leave it to the community to find out ways to actually prevent this bug from ever happening. And to Caddy over on Reddit, mentioned that he played without fear of the inventory wipe, and he posted a pretty interesting temporary fix. Of course, this was also announced by the developers initially. So like many of you, I've been playing this game in constant fear of my inventory being wiped. A friend and I were playing all day yesterday and stumbled across a method we were able to reproduce 10+ times that prevented the inventory wipe bug. Note that both of us were on Steam/PC. I don't know if this same method works for consoles, though personally I think it should be a little bit easier over there. So my friend repeatedly joined and left my lobby as I sat in the Outriders camp, which is the opposite he should be doing. Eventually, one of every 10 or so attempts at joining caused the inventory wipe bug. Whenever his character loaded into the camp and he noticed that there was no gear equipped, he very quickly tapped Alt F4 and hard closed the game. Upon rebooting, every single time his inventory was restored, he did this as fast as possible before even opening his inventory. Just look at your character and see if your armor loads. As mentioned above, we were able to reproduce this roughly 10 times as he was brave enough to keep risking his gear in the name of science. So I salute these two players right here for what they have done. Yes, it kind of sucks to put your inventory at risk, but they did mention that that actually works. I've also seen reports from other people saying that the same trick also works on consoles. For example, on the Xbox, another user reported that they did pretty much the same thing, immediately closing the game, go back in, and it worked. So the way I'm seeing this, it seems that if you log in the game with your inventory wiped and somehow the game manages to autosave, it's going to behave as if you yourself deleted the inventory, and if it manages to save on top of the previous online save, it's going to save with the version of your character that did not have any inventory left. So that is why Alt F4 or closing the game as fast as possible is the best solution, because it will prevent the autosave to happen and it's not going to overwrite anything. Now, of course, there's a pretty funny thread that got a pretty big traction over on Reddit, PCF/CE social media presence after posting the balance update, pretty much fading into the background, completely disappearing the moment there is some bad news. Well, actually, they were pretty much hard at work. So the Archon, well, which is pretty much their community manager on pretty much all the social media, mentioned that we are still here, saying to community managers on Twitter, Reddit, Steam Forum, Discord, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, there are 2 of us and we've had a lot to deal with this weekend, as you can imagine. We've been monitoring the inventory wipe, collecting reports of it across multiple threads and platforms, building patterns that we feed back to the team, attempting to reproduce such issues, on top of responding to some questions and providing the latest news on social. And to be honest, anxiety already hits me just at the thought of like putting all of this work into all of these places. Why haven't we addressed the balance question on social yet? Because to address such a community concern requires more than a 280 character tweet, and a shorthand response will just aggravate annoyed players even further. He recognizes you'll want details and bigger explanations. I'm working with a design team to write up a bigger and longer insight into the balancing process behind Outriders in between dealing with the inventory wipes. It's coming, but we need to prioritize. And I know that some of the concerns are regarding how they prioritize, like rebalancing over the other stuff. Just in case you didn't read the balance notes, balancing is done by a team that is entirely separate from those working on game stability or debugging. So no, nobody is getting sacrificed to nerf classes or nerf loot farms. There's 2 separate teams. They were like these from the beginning, and they are doing whatever they can to fix the game. Both can be done at the same time without one taking precedence over the other, he mentions. And yeah, the fact that they are the only 2 community managers and they are spread across everything going on. Now, what you might have noticed in the past 24 hours with like all of this situation is that you might have gotten mugged and kidnapped, and your tires were probably stolen from your car. And I'm not kidding, not only did they take my gear, they kidnapped my Outrider and jacked my tires. Methadome over on Reddit is mentioning, and it's not the only thread of this type, there's multiple other people who have mentioned this as well. So talk about getting mugged, like this is straight up daylight robbing. They took everything from this man right here, pretty much everything gone but naked, left on the streets, and now he can't even access his own character anymore. But what if I told you that this is intended? And there was one really important question: does your plan also concern / address the character being unplayable in the process, resulting in an inventory wipe? I mean, some of us got a wiped inventory but still can play the character, while others cannot. And as I've said, there's multiple other people reporting the same thing. It seems that the affected characters being unplayable is actually a current safeguard that prevents further corruption of the save game. The inventory wipe issue is a big one to grapple with, so it's hard to provide definitive answer here and now, but ensuring that all characters will return to full playability is something we are doing our utmost to ensure, which actually sounds really interesting. So yeah, I guess the way they thought about this is to just like prevent access to these characters so that people don't like overwrite or further corrupt the save file, and just have it there stuck in a limbo in a little bit, then have it all fixed, give it back with everything on it. It sucks, you lose a few days of playtime, but at least you're getting your inventory back as it was. I can't imagine losing some of the items that I have. They are pretty much god rolls and whatnot. They have everything that I need, the mods and the stats, and if I were to lose them, just to have them replaced with something similar but not best in slot, I would probably lose it because I've worked a ton to get that eye level 50 gear with the best possible stats to carry my sorry butt into the end game and finally get some decent loot. This is it though for now. Totally let me know down below how was your experience in the past 24 hours. Has anything changed for you? Have you lost your inventory? Did you lose access to your character as well? I really want to see your opinion down below. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.